You are listening to the Hiking Radio Network, where we talk the walk with shows by hikers, about hikers, for everybody.
Mighty Blue on the Appalachian Trail, the ultimate midlife crisis. Join Steve and his guests every week as he staggers from Georgia to Maine.
Hey guys, it's so good to be back with you all again. This is episode number 497 of Mighty Blue on the Appalachian Trail, the ultimate midlife crisis. And we're only a couple of weeks away from episode number 500 at the end of the month. I know that there are still a few episodes missing from my Southwest Coast Path hike last year, and I'm still hoping to fill those in one day, but an episode 500 is still a big deal, and I'll be celebrating it appropriately. Today we have, well, a slightly different main couple of guests. This week, Jim and Sarah Klepzig, or Rocky Root and Social Cutie, join us and share with us a story of hope, love and resilience in the midst of unspeakable tragedy. Jim wrote to me, and when I understood what had happened, I wanted the two of them to come on the show. You'll understand more as our conversation unfolds, and you'll be inspired at how they are dealing with what happened in as positive a manner as they can. After Jim and Sarah, we catch up with our intrepid Appalachian Trail adventurers as both Beth and Andrew and Dave continue to put in big miles in their search for Katahdin. Beth and Andrew appear to be getting trail magic at least once a day, while Dave is reconnecting with people he met far back in his hike, showing the serendipity of the trail. So let's get going then and meet Jim and Sarah Klepzig. We had one or two technical issues with Sarah's side of things, but I've edited most of them out, and I hope you get as much out of this conversation as I did. Today we've got a couple on the show who've always done some hiking, but who turned it into something more earnest after an incident that changed their lives. This is Jim and Sarah Klepzig. Hey guys, thanks for coming on the show and doing this.
Yeah, thanks.
Thanks, Steve. Nice to chat with you.
Now, my notes are a little chaotic because I tend to write while Jim was talking yesterday, and he was talking quite fast, so I was putting all sorts of different things down. But as a family, you and your now grown-up kids have done some hiking over the years, is that right?
Yes, we have. We've done various getaways and hikes together, some with the kids, and then some Sarah and I. Nice.
And you've both been runners as well. Did that extend to your children as well?
Yes, to Tristan, probably Tristan the most, and then the other two are also runners, and they run with us various times. We run certain annual races together every year.
Okay. So, now, the one I want to focus on now is your middle son, Tristan. Can you take your time over this, tell us what happened 5 years ago?
Tristan was a senior at UNF, University of North Florida, here in Jacksonville. And he was working on his senior project with some other kids in his group. And he was feeling sort of stressed out at the time. And so what he would do was he would go out for a run.
Sure.
So he did that one Thursday night in late October. And during this run, it was late, it was dark. He was running near the campus. And anyway, there was a terrible accident, and Tristan was struck by a vehicle. And we did not know it at the time because he didn't have any identification on him.
Oh, gosh.
And so we didn't know until the next evening on Friday night when our other son received some phone calls from Tristan's friends and said, "Hey, have you seen Tristan?" So that led from one thing to the next. And so what we didn't know is that Tristan was transported to a local hospital, and he passed away the next morning, midday. And we did not realize what had happened until like 6 p.m. that night.
Oh, my gosh.
And I was a nurse working at that hospital, and I did not know he was there. He died while I was there, but I didn't even know he was there. So tragic.
Good Lord. And having lost my own son a couple of years ago to a drug overdose, I've got something of an understanding of how terrible the loss of a son can be, though your story is much more of a shock because it's so unexpected, so sudden, and Tristan was so young. How did you process that in the immediate aftermath of his passing, particularly how you found out?
I don't know if there's a simple answer to that, Steve. From my perspective, I think everyone just kind of, when that happens, you just kind of go into reactionary mode, and your parents and you have other kids, and you're taking it minute at a time when that happens.
Sure. And I know that you went pretty much straight back to work. Was that in any way a solution to help you get past this?
Looking back on it, it might have been premature to go back to work that early. But I feel like my work and the company that I work for was very, very supportive. And so being around my work family was also very healing for me. And so I think it was a good experience in the end, the way we chose to process.
And what about you, Sarah? You went back to the same hospital where your son passed. So did you go back pretty much straight away? Have we lost Sarah?
Oh, we might have lost her, Steve. But anyway, I'll answer until she gets back on.
Sure.
Sarah went back to work shortly thereafter. I think it was about the same time as I did. She can give some more details when she jumps back on about her work experience. But one thing I can say about Sarah and I is that one thing that we knew right from the start is that losing a child was something that had, that is obviously a very traumatic event, and it also is the cause for many divorces. And
sure,
losing Tristan came by the time we lost Tristan, we had been married almost 30 years. And so we just wanted, if anything, we wanted it to draw us closer instead of far apart.
Okay. We lost Sarah for a second there, but I edited some of the loss out. So, so Sarah, I actually asked a question about how, about going back to work straight after or soon after Tristan passed, and you went back to the same hospital he'd passed in. So was that therapeutic in any way or cathartic in any way for you to go back to work in that hospital?
I couldn't decide if it was or not, because all day long I'd hear the trauma alerts and I'd walk in there and cry and feel like I was going to throw up on the way to work. But yet the people at the office were so good. And I just felt like maybe it was a good thing for me to be there. And so I actually stayed there for 2 years before I finally stopped. And I will have to say, when I stopped, it was a relief to not have to go there.
I can understand that. And in fact, we then, while you were away, you were somewhere in the ether somewhere, I'm not sure where you actually went, Jim and I were talking, and he talks about how one of the causes of divorce after an terrible incident like this, losing a child, there's a lot of incidents of divorce, and you decided not to let that happen to you because. And one of the things that was particularly interesting to me, Jim said the other day, was that you both grieve differently. And we all do grieve differently, I'm sure. So let's talk about that a little bit more. How do you individually process grief? I mean, you go first, Sarah.
I felt like what happened in our family is I went into total superwoman mode, and I saw Jim and the kids completely falling apart. So I feel like I completely hid my grief.
You're a nurse. They do that.
I hid my grief and just tried to help them. And I would sob in the shower, and I would sob when I was riding alone in the car. And looking back, I wish I would not have done that because my family thought I wasn't grieving. And I was grieving, but I was trying to be strong for them. And then when I felt like they were all getting better, then I let myself crash.
Right. So the thing you turned to was something called Grief Share, which I've never heard of at all. So tell us about Grief Share.
We heard about it, and we, of course, when this happened, we started looking online for support, and this kept coming up as something that people did. So I had a friend that tried it. So we said, "What are we out?" So we tried it. It's a 13-week program. It's free, and it's all over the nation. And you can do it online or in the office or in Meet. And every week they focus on a different aspect of grief. And our group was really small, like 4 or 5 people. And it was really nice. And it's any type of death. So there was people that had lost spouses or children or anything. And we really bonded with these people after 13 weeks.
And what do you do, though? Do you just open up to each other about your grief, or do you get counseling about that grief?
There's a facilitator, and every week is a certain subject that you read a little bit from a book they give you. And then she kind of tells you kind of about that subject, like a complicated grief would be one of the weeks. And then you would go around and share if you wanted to, and people would cry. But then the person who facilitates has also had a significant loss. So they understand the loss, and they're usually farther out than you are. So they're just really good about guiding you and making you feel like you're normal for feeling the way you do. So just created a community, and we became really close to those people.
Sure. I'm sure you did. I mean, the shared grief, and I don't hate to bring everything back to the Appalachian Trail, but every time you meet somebody in a shelter who's got this shared experience with you as well. So, you have that thing in common with them, and they talk about the trail, when they're there. And one of the things that they did talk about was the benefits of hiking. So did that plant some sort of seed within the two of you?
Yes. So we kept hearing about the Camino in Spain during these sessions. And so we learned about it. That would be great, but it'll never happen, because how can we ever take that much time off work?
As luck had it, you were able to, I suppose.
There's another part to that story, Steve.
Go on then.
Yeah. So the other part is, so Sarah was doing all this research in the background, and what she was, I don't know if she was waiting for this or not, but I was just going back to work and going through the motions, and I finally came to I'll say to the end of myself or whatever, and someone at our company high up came and talked to me and said, what's wrong with you? You don't seem to be very focused and all that. And I just cracked. And I was just like, I just realized right then that, yes, it's all about Tristan, and I just haven't dealt with this. And so we decided, like you can get back up and go through the motions and smile, and everyone that says, how are you doing? And they want you to say everything's okay.
Sure.
And that's okay, because some people are just uncomfortable with talking about it. But anyway, so finally.
Hang on. That's interesting. So you've got the feeling that if you said everything's okay, people will then move along with their day.
I would say most people, yes. Most people, this makes talking about a death of your child or your brother or wife or husband or whatever is difficult for most people until they've been through it themselves.
I find friends are very good at just providing a lending ear. That's what I've found anyway. Friends will listen to you and aren't looking for you just to say I'm fine. In fact, they'd rather you didn't say I'm fine. They'd rather you trusted them to share your story with them, in my experience anyway.
Well, I know that I love anytime I hear the word Tristan, or someone asks me about Tristan, or because we love talking about Tristan, we really do.
I'm sure. So you talked about you've done a little bit of hiking in the past, but you've done obviously quite a lot more since he passed. So tell us what have you actually done, and we'll talk through some of those things.
So because Jim was not doing well, we both took leave of absence from our work for 7.5 weeks, and we went to Spain and we walked the Camino del Norte.
Right.
Which was almost 600 miles. So we walked 20 miles a day for 30 days. So that was
just come back myself.
Oh, yeah.
I did a Camino Frances I came back 2 weeks ago. Yeah. So it was
Santiago.
and the Norte is meant to be particularly pretty and quite difficult as well. Was this and I haven't asked at all about any religious affiliations you have. Are you spiritual people? Are you church people? Was this a pilgrimage for you? Or did it obviously had the different resonance because of your son, but was this to do with the religion of Santiago?
No, it was just to deal with the grief of our son.
Okay. And I know that you came up with the idea of handing out keychains. Tell us how that happened.
So where Tristan's accident site is, there's a sign that's been put up shortly after the accident like just a memorial roadside sign. And so sometime after his funeral, someone sent us a little box of these things, and they were just like little keychains in the same shape, the round white sign that basically has the same wording that is on Tristan's sign. And it just says about drive safely in memory of Tristan Klepzig, and I think the date of his birth and death or something like that. So we started to pass these out to young kids that were learning to drive and just anyone who wanted one. And then we started taking them with us. Of course, we have one on our own keychain.
Sure.
But somewhere along the line, we got the idea that we should take them to all these destinations that we've been to. And we've now have a pretty neat list of places where we've deposited these keychains. Some of them can be found later and some of them cannot.
So is that deliberate? You try to hide them away from people? I know you do we'll talk about the Appalachian Trail in a minute, but I know you've done it on that. So where have they been? Where is Tristan's keychain these days?
He has one at the bottom of the Grand Canyon at Phantom Ranch. There's a stump there by the picnic table, and there's one hidden in there, so that one can be found.
Right, yeah.
Another one was thrown at the bottom of the Grand Canyon into the Colorado River, which will not be found. Right. We left one at Finisterre, Spain, at the end of the Camino, so there's one there. And then we just left one in Italy in the crater of Mount Vesuvius.
Wow.
And we hiked to the top of that. So that's pretty neat.
So what is the hiking doing for you in terms of how it brings you closer to Tristan? Because I'm sure all of your hiking now is imbued with your son. So tell us what it all means to you now.
I think for me, when I'm out hiking and doing an adventure like this, we're out in nature and you're away from the grind of daily life and you just have time to reflect and think about him. And I know that he loved to run and exercise and for his mental health. And so I feel like I reflect on that a lot when I'm doing exercise like that.
Sure. And in fact, I was going to ask you, because when Jim and I spoke, Jim, you told me that your Camino did something, that you couldn't actually precisely say what it was that it did. But I think, Sarah, you've kind of said what it was then. It's this thing of, so for you, it's thinking about your son, thinking about being in nature and the times he enjoyed doing that, almost that same thing.
She's a deeper thinker than I am, Steve. What can I say?
Yeah, once again, nurse. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, that's right. It makes you pause and reflect on really what's important in life. And that's what I love about getting away and doing an adventure like that. And and at this point, it feels good to maybe cry a little bit when you're doing that. It feels special to miss him at 5 years out.
Yes. But it's a different miss, isn't it?
It is.
It isn't that same. I can see you've got this lovely smiling face at the moment. You're smiling the whole time. I don't know whether you're hiding your grief or whatever, but it's something that, you're looking back fondly. I know that when I walked on my Camino this last couple of weeks, last couple of months rather, I thought about my son a heck of a lot, particularly the Meseta, funnily enough, where the Meseta, which is this kind of barren area, well, not barren, actually quite fertile, but this flat area of about 9 days through wheat fields, which sounds awful, by the way, and many people seem to miss it, but I didn't want to miss it. And I loved that feeling of silence and peace and solitude, that I could just think about my son and what it was like. And I also lost my last wife about 3 or 4 months ago as well. So those things, what you think about those people when you're on this trip. Now, you mentioned that you've done the Grand Canyon rim to rim. What was that like? Because I've always turned down the opportunity to do it, by the way. What do you think of that?
That's exhilarating.
That's a intense. That's a Camino, but like very intense. Like it all in one day. So we would leave. We did it twice. Actually, Sarah's done it 3 times.
All right.
But we would leave like 2:00 in the morning and hike down to Phantom Ranch.
Hide the keychain. They have a. If you get there by like 6 a.m., they have a fantastic pancake breakfast, and so
we made it. That was our goal. If you want breakfast, you better be there. And then the work starts. Then you're climbing back out on the opposite side.
You're absolutely still not selling it to me. Nothing like that I would ever want to do.
It is the beauty. It is absolutely gorgeous, though. It is every bit as gorgeous as the Camino to me, like, because you have so much near and depth. The depth is just like amazing, like the depth perception that you see out there.
I've never had anybody on this program who didn't enjoy doing it, and none of them have ever made me want to do it. So God bless you. Now, I want to talk about the Appalachian Trail, when did you first get on the trail? Because I know and by the way, how far are you from the trail? Where do you live?
We live in Jacksonville.
All right,
so,
Florida,
yep.
Same as me.
So we're about 6 hours from the
approach.
Springer Mountain. Yeah.
So with your keychains now, what was the thought, and when did the thought process come up to start thinking about the Appalachian Trail?
We'd love to do the whole thing at once, but we can't. So we're going to section hike it.
Right.
And we started with the approach trail.
Right. So you start with the approach, which, by the way, is not as easy as people think. It's pretty much uphill all the way. And so what have you done? How far have you gone so far, Jim? How far have you gone on the AT so far?
We have went from the approach trail to Gooch Gap, which is 30-some miles, if I remember correctly.
Right.
That's where we've hidden 2 of Tristan's keychains. So we're going to pick up where those keychains are and head on up the trail.
How do you know you'll find them? By the way, did you leave 2 in case you don't find one of them?
We left 2, but they're in one bag in one spot.
It's a bit odd. Well, one each to carry, I suppose.
We both carried them on our backpacks, and then when we got there, we found a good, I feel like a very safe and secure hiding spot that hopefully we can find them, although it has been through a hurricane since we've been there. So we'll see.
Oh, God, yes. Oh, my word. Yeah, you ought to think about that next time.
Yeah.
Yeah. So now I want to return to Tristan now. We'll come back to 18 minutes. But I wanted to return to Tristan and the conversation you had after he passed with, of all things for a 22-year-old boy, his financial advisor. 2 questions. What on earth was he doing with a financial advisor at 22? But more seriously, tell us about the growth of an idea that came from that conversation.
So I'll start with well, let's see, financial advisor. Tristan had a real business mind on him. And although he did have a tab with his dad and mom when he was in school.
Of course he did.
Yes.
Still on the payroll.
Right. Still on the payroll. What we didn't realize is that he had also invested a nice sum of money as well. And we didn't totally realize that until we got in touch with the financial advisor to advise him of what had happened to Tristan. And he's also our financial advisor. And anyway, he's just a really nice guy. And so we just talked for a long time. Part of that conversation. So Tristan, I give a lot of credit to Tristan. He saw the need for that. And he was a very conservative-minded young man and saw the value in that.
Sure.
Regarding the conversation with the financial advisor, at that point he said to us, he's a runner also, and he said someday he said you can put together a 5K run in memory of Tristan and raise money for a charity and all those kinds of things. And so we did look into it initially, and then we thought at the time it was just like too much. We didn't have enough bandwidth for this. Too much bandwidth. I can imagine. What it must be like. Yeah. So we decided, hey, if it happens, great. If the door opens, and if not, no problem. And we just kind of left it there until October of last year, when Sarah and the kids started this Instagram page called Run for the Rolls.
You can't pass that by. Tell us about the cinnamon rolls, by the way, Sarah.
Well, Tristan, his birthday wish was always to have a pan of cinnamon rolls. So since he's died, on his birthday and the day he died, we still have a pan of cinnamon rolls. So it's kind of fun.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. So you started the Instagram page, Run for the Roll. So what's happened? Seems to have got larger and larger.
Well, last year, so we just did kind of a grassroots thing where anybody who was interested, or whether we knew them or didn't know them or whatever, it didn't matter. For the month of October, we were just going to run and log our miles. And so people would send in their miles and maybe a picture. And a lot of the people we knew and some we didn't, but we would just log everyone's miles. And I think it ended up being like 20 some states.
8 countries.
There.
Wow.
27 states and 8 countries.
4,600 miles.
Wow.
And
something.
we logged like 4,600 miles or something.
And what did you do? What was it? Were you trying to raise money for a charity?
No, we were just trying to stay healthy to offset the cinnamon rolls.
All right. That's excellent.
We were actually trying to turn the month of October into something positive.
Yeah, damn right.
Because October was always a hard month. So it totally changed our mindset. It was fun.
Yeah, I'm sure. And you're doing it again this year?
Well, so what happened last year is the company I work for, they noticed this also. They're very big into community outreach.
Nice.
My company. Anyway, so they noticed this Instagram page, and they have a community outreach committee, and they came to me several months back, and they said, "Hey, last October we noticed," and some of them participated on the October run that we did, and they said this year we've gotten with the CEO, and we've set up a generous budget, and they're funding a 5K race this year. So this will be the first 5K called Run for the Rolls.
Right.
And it's on October 25th, right here in Jacksonville, where I work.
So if anybody lives anywhere near Jacksonville, they can come and run for the rolls.
Yes, they can. And get a good local not homemade. We were going to have Sarah do it, but she refused. She didn't want to make 400 cinnamon rolls.
Yeah, I can see why that might be a bit of an issue, yeah. So the running and the section hiking of the AT, what are the plans for the sections? I mean, what's the intention here? Is the intention to do the whole of the AT over a period of time in honor of Tristan?
That's our goal. And it's a tall order. We realize that. Like, for example, that's been our goal for over a year, I would say. And in a year, we only have done that one hike about a year ago. So right. Now we have 2.
That ain't going to get it done, by the way. He's not going to get it done.
We're getting after it, yeah.
Right. So what are the plans for this year then?
So we're going this weekend.
Oh, nice.
To do just the one we already talked to you about, and then hopefully over Labor Day.
Right. And how far do you think you will get after these 2?
I'm hoping that we can get to the North Carolina line somewhere.
Right. That's nice. And so on this at this rate of progress, any idea when you're going to get to Katahdin?
We have to pick up the pace. We need to talk to you about that, Steve. You could probably give us a lot of input.
Here's a fun thing. At the doctor's office where I was working, an 80-year-old came to the desk, and she was so excited because she had just made it to Katahdin. And I asked her when she started. She started at age 60, and it took her 20 years, and she sectioned hiked the whole thing. So I came home and told Jim, hey, wow. We've got 30 years that we left till we're 80. We can do this. So that's the goal. Yeah.
You're good. I've only got 7 years till I'm 80. So yeah, I've got to be careful if I ever did it again, I tell you. So I want to leave it actually still. I want to talk about Tristan again. So tell us about him. Tell us, what was he like as a bloke? I know you're biased, by the way, as parents, and I'm not preparing you for this, obviously, but what was he like?
Wow, that brings a lump in my throat a little bit right there. He had, I would say, my personality and my, I don't know. Him and I looked similar.
Okay.
He was very carefree. I would say, as far as like maybe spunkiness and free-spiritedness, he was probably more like Sarah.
I would say he totally lived life. So he was 22, but he put a lot into those 22 years. And I feel like he was very adventuresome, and he knew he needed to finish school, and he did, but he had fun along the way too. So I say he had a balance of a work-life balance, maybe a little bit more life than work.
No, that's okay. At 22, he should not have had too much work.
No.
He should have been more life than work. Well, look, I know this is not an easy subject to talk about, and I wanted to have you on because I lost my son as well, and I know it's a terrible, terrible time. The fact that you're trying to make a real positivity out of it, I think, is such a good thing. So if anybody does want to run with rolls, I'm going to put a link in the show notes so people can perhaps come along and so on. And I just wish you well with that, and obviously your future hikes. And I guess I'll be interviewing when you're about 95, finishing at Katahdin.
That would be great.
Call back in to give you some regular updates.
There you go. Oh, yeah, do that. Yeah. Okay, man. Well, look, and Sarah, love you to speak with you. And I just wish you well with everything, and I hope your upcoming hikes go well as well.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Steve. Nice to talk to you.
Cheers then. Bye. How admirable of the two of them to want to come on and share that heartbreaking event that would have decimated many couples. Having lost my own son, I have some idea of their pain, but the suddenness of Tristan's death is the most shocking part to me. He had so much to live for, and a terrible accident just cut off all that potential. He had a financial advisor at 22, for God's sake, so he clearly had a smart head on his shoulders. And Jim and Sarah turned to hiking to heal. We've had many people on the podcast who have attested to the power of hiking and its ability to heal their souls. Jim and Sarah will never get over losing Tristan, and nor should they. And some of that pain will always be there. But at least they have been able to turn his memory into one of positivity, and those hikes will always bring them close to him, if only in their thoughts. The keychains are the token of that positivity, and I'm happy to report that since we recorded the interview, Jim and Sarah found the hidden key tags at Gooch Gap and have successfully completed their next section of the AT, reburying the key tags somewhere near Unicoi Gap. I hope that some of you who may have lost somebody recently, or at any time in fact, will take some solace from Jim and Sarah. I know I did. Just before we move on to Beth and Andrew's update this week, I wanted to let you know that I'm letting my P.O. box go, which is always mentioned in my show notes. In future, if you want to write to me, you can address it directly to my home, the address of which is now in the show notes. Thanks this week to our awesome donors. This week we've been supported again by recurring donors Jens Lipperheider, Lisa Rana, Brian Helton Jr., Paul Chevelle, Woody Bass and Natisha Webb, while Audrey Scanlon also made a very generous donation this month. Thanks to you all, it is so much appreciated. So now, let's hear how Beth and Andrew are coping with the Pennsylvania rocks. Here they are. Hey Beth, hey Andrew, how are you this morning?
We're great.
Good, thanks.
7:30 in the morning. I apologise for talking too early for you. And last time we spoke, you were on a 0 day in Duncannon, and I warned you that you were about to hit the rocks. Your text tells me you didn't find the next day to be too bad. So why? Because I seem to remember once you climb up out of, after you've crossed the Susquehanna River, it gets pretty bad after that, but it wasn't too bad for you?
It wasn't. We didn't think it was that bad at all. It just seemed like things that we'd done before.
Yeah, it seemed like there was just like sections of rocks, and then it wasn't too bad. I was kind of expecting it to be like miles and miles of big, long rocks, but it was just small sections, and then you kind of get a little break from it, and then rocks again, and then a break.
What, do you still feel the same? I mean, have you changed your mind yet about the rocks? I thought it might change, yeah.
Well, yesterday, it still was rocks and then no rocks, but yesterday was yesterday and the day before seemed like they were.
Yeah, the rocks have been picking up.
Right, indeed. And you know what? People say they stop at Delaware Water Gap. They don't. They're now with you to the end of the trail, just so you know.
Okay.
Yeah. Enjoy that. and as when we spoke just before I press record, on that day you had 2 lots of trail magic. I've got to tell you, you've either hit the trail at precisely the optimum trail magic time, or Trail Angels have really stepped up their game since I went in 2019. What's happening?
I don't know. We had trail magic twice that day, and once was right in the middle, which was perfect. And Twizzler and his wife have been doing it. I think they said 3 years or something like that. Yeah. And they had banana bread with chocolate chips,
sodas, and chairs to sit on.
It's incredible.
Yeah. And then at the end of the day, Chris and his daughter were there, and I think they'd done it for maybe 2 years. And like they were just great. They had fresh watermelon, like a lot of food.
And it was great because they said, you guys are probably the last ones for the day, so go ahead and take whatever you want.
Yeah.
I suspect that's a dangerous thing to say to you, isn't it, Andrew?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the next day, this made me laugh when I read this, you and meat cookies set out, but you left Andrew behind. Why is that? Have you had enough of him or what?
No, he just always is a little slower getting on the uptake.
I don't know if you've noticed, but I'm not one for the morning. The only reason to get up early in the morning is to catch a plane or to roll over and go back to sleep.
Okay. So there's no planes, you turn over and go back to sleep. Good idea. But Beth says you ended up in a conversation with a guy named Bob and his dog.
Yeah, Bob. So this is kind of funny. Beth and me cookies, they were gone for half hour, and I was still had to pack up my tent and get ready. I was sitting on this log by myself in the middle of nowhere by myself, putting on my socks and shoes. So I'm kind of focused on my feet, and I'm wearing my hat. I'm wearing a hat, so the brim is kind of cutting off my peripherals. And I'm just sitting there focusing on my feet, and then all of a sudden I hear a drum, drum, like an animal, a four-legged animal running right at me.
Oh my God.
And then I saw this big brown furry thing right next to me, and I thought it was a bear, and I screamed. I go, ah! Turns out it was the world's friendliest dog just coming to say hi.
And lick you, no doubt.
Yeah. But now I know the sound I would make if I ever do get attacked by a bear. Well, and I'm proud to say that it's a manly sound.
It's good to be forewarned. Any bears yet, by the way?
I have not seen one.
Amazing.
Yeah, I just had that one that ran across the road in front of me in Shenandoah, but
kind of disappointing. It's kind of disappointing, isn't it? I think that's one of the great things about being on the trail is seeing live animals. You must have seen deer and stuff like that, haven't you?
Yeah. We've seen deer. Yeah.
How about snakes? How you doing with snakes?
I saw a rattlesnake one day.
Makes you jump, doesn't it? Makes you jump when you see them.
Well, luckily, meat was in front of me, and so then he told me where it was, and so I ran out of the way and got around it. But it wasn't very big. But we saw a great big, huge, like black snake the other day. But
they're okay.
It was fun.
Yeah. And then you came to the beaver dam. And from my memory last time, there is an alternate you can take to miss it, but you ploughed right on through it, as Dave did, actually. It's kind of fun, I thought. Did you get wet?
No, no, there were logs and stuff. And if you just were careful, it was fun.
Yeah, I agree. Totally. And then you say that another hostel I'd never heard of at Sotaro. Tell us about that. And it was an army tent or something.
Yeah, it was an army tent. I think the guy this is maybe his second season or something. And he put up this great big army tent, and it's right by the trail. And then there's these army cots in it. And then he has a little shed that has a lot of resupply, actually.
Nice.
When we got there, he had no power. So then we got an Uber, went into town and got something to eat. But then the power came back on, and there was lights and power in the tent, but it was just a tent. It was a little loud because of the road noise, but it was good.
If you're tired enough, which you normally are when you're hiking, it's not too bad. I love that expression, by the way. We got an Uber. Earl Schaefer never got an Uber.
Yeah.
I love that. And talking about availability of modern things, last Friday was, of course, the 4th of July, and you two did another 20-mile day, but you stopped in the middle of the day at the 501 shelter, which is a shelter just away from the road. Tell us why you stopped there and why it was somewhat disappointing.
Well, we've been hearing rumors since, I think, at least 100 miles.
Yeah.
I'm not exactly sure where, but they're saying, if you go to shelter 501, you can order pizza and they'll have it delivered to you.
I did, yes.
So we're like, all right, all day long. We're like, all right, if we just go another 3 miles, we can order pizza. And then we get there, and it was the 4th of July, and everything was closed. So we were
what a
giant letdown. But that's okay.
By the way, how is the hiker hunger? Because you are being fed tremendously. Are you just eating tons and tons? But do you feel hungry all the time, ready to eat?
I'm always hungry, but I remember the other times that you've asked me how much weight I've lost. I'm coming up on 16, 17 pounds that I've lost. So I'm wasting away to nothing.
It's remarkable. You can eat and eat and eat, and you waste away, as you say.
Yeah.
And then you were lucky enough to get a couple of slack packs the following couple of days from your friends Janelle and Jen. And had the train worsened by then, or were you coping quite well with the rocks?
They've been okay until like I said, yesterday was just really hard coming out of Palmerton. But otherwise, I mean, sometimes it's kind of a little fun to hop from rock to rock, and when you're slack packing, I mean, holy moly, it makes a huge difference.
That makes a massive difference, doesn't it? Yeah. But my memory of it was that there was virtually nowhere to put your foot without putting your foot on a sharp rock as well. It's almost like they sharpen them deliberately in Pennsylvania, especially for hikers when they go along. And two friends have joined you, Tam and Brian, and I see that you treated them to a 15-mile day one. How was that for them?
Yeah, it was okay. Unfortunately, Tam tweaked her knee, and so she isn't hiking with us today. Oh. She went to the doctor yesterday, and it's some muscle thing, I think, but so it's not anything permanent, but it's just not, these rocks are just too hard when you don't feel 100%.
Yes. Yeah, of course. Yeah.
It's probably good that she didn't come with us yesterday because those rocks up out of
Palmerton.
I'm going to talk to you about those. Yes, I know.
Okay. Well, I'll just wait.
that is a special climb. That's one of my favourite places of the trail. And that day took you to Eckville Shelter. And I was under the impression that was closing at some stage, but you said it's still operating. It's got a flush toilet and solar shower, I remember as well.
Yeah, the caretaker guy or whatever, he said it's going to close this next year, I think.
Oh, right. Okay. So, it's a good place to spot because it's a nice little place to camp just across the road, isn't it? In the little
camping spot was great.
Yeah, that's right. And I think this is the loveliest thing, by the way. You met some teenagers who had questions about through hiking. I think it's so cool when that happens because you never know. It might have inspired a couple of them to put the AT on their bucket list as well. What sort of things were they asking you?
So there's like a sports summer camp that they were all part of, and I was for once of the whole trail, I was ahead of Beth and meat cookies. So I got up there first, and then the camp counselor came up and it's like, "Are you through hiking?" I was like, "Yeah, I am." And they go, "Oh, you mind if we ask you some questions?" And nice. So they gathered around and said, "What's the hardest part? What kind of preparations did you do before you started?" And that sort of thing.
So your hardest part was get up in the morning, wasn't it?
Yeah, that's the hardest part.
That's funny. And of course, more trail magic by Janelle and Jen at the end of the day. But you did the knife's edge a couple of days ago. I remember that, and I slipped on it once. I didn't actually fall, so that's that's challenging because the angles of the rocks. I think was it yes. Dry when you were walking across there?
Yes, it was dry, and so but it took a while to get across there. But it was, it was challenging. It was kind of fun, but kind of scary at the same time.
Yeah. And was Tam still with you then, or had she hurt her knee by then?
She had hurt her knee that day, but she was still with us. So she went over the knife's edge. Yeah.
All right. Yesterday was that climb out of Lehigh Gap near Palmerton. Tell listeners, I know that people must have seen pictures, and the pictures are quite scary when you look down from the top there. It's a long way straight, isn't it? So tell people what it's like.
The pictures never do it justice. It really is.
No, you're right.
But it's just like one step down from rock climbing. It's no longer hiking anymore. If you just go one step further, it's rock climbing. And it's vertical. It's got to be over at least 45-degree angle, if not more. And it was so hot yesterday. It was almost 90, and so the rocks were so hot, and then there's no water up there, so you're just pouring sweat, and there wasn't any water to drink, and it's just You get up to the top of this really hard climb, and then you turn the corner, and you're like, oh no, there's you just look up, and it's even worse than the one you just finished.
I'd love that. I don't know why you didn't enjoy that. I think that's just
I'm not saying I didn't enjoy it.
Okay.
I thought it was fun, but it was difficult. Now that it's over, it's fun.
Yeah. Now that it's over.
And the white blazes are they turn it into a sort of jigsaw for you, don't they? A jigsaw puzzle where you try to work out how to get up to that white blaze. It's not possible to get up there, it feels, and then you find a little path up there, don't you? Well, it's not exactly a path. Not exactly a path, is it?
No, not really a path.
It's a knife's edge, we'll call it.
Yeah, and for the last 2 nights, you stayed at the KOA campground. What's KOA?
It's just a campground for, a lot of RVers use it and stuff. And so Janelle's got her camper van here. So then they just brought us here, and there was a little cabin, and it's got 4 bunks and a bed in it. And so we just rented it for 2 nights, and so they've been bringing us back and forth to it. And yeah, it's nice.
So you started, when was it? April? Was it April?
March 31st.
March 31st. Okay. Well, yeah. So you're 2 and a bit months into it. Are you 2 and a bit months more than that?
A little over 3.
April, May, June. Yeah, just a little over 3 months. So what's your mileage now, and how far are you from Delaware Water Gap?
So we're at 1266 today, and that's where we're starting.
Right.
It's still a long ways to go.
Oh yeah, but you know what? You'd be surprised though. The second half seems to go quicker because the number of miles you got to go seems to go down very, very fast. So whatever you thought you were going to think about and decide to do before you got to the end, remember, think about it now, because once you cross the border into Maine, you think, I haven't sorted anything else at all. So make sure you get that done. Okay, guys. Well, look, lovely to talk to you. I'm glad you're going well. I'm glad you've not found the rocks too bad apart from yesterday, and just keep on enjoying it, okay?
Okay.
Will do. Thanks.
Cheers, guys. Bye.
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 I just cannot get over how much trail magic they're getting. Andrew has still lost, 18 pounds? I think that's one of the things that a lot of my friends couldn't understand when I came back 60 pounds lighter in 2014. They just couldn't get their heads around the idea that your average guy on the AT loses between 5,000 and 7,000 calories a day just by walking. And although Beth is quite a small frame, she's doubtless toning up, while Andrew is hemorrhaging weight. It's really something to experience while it's happening. All of us guys finish with this huge lower body and the weedy T-Rex upper body, while most of the women come back as toned Amazons. It's quite remarkable and slightly unfair. So that's Beth and Andrew. Let's find out how Dave's doing, about a month up the road and only a few days shy of New Hampshire. Hey Dave, how are you?
Hey, good afternoon, Steve. Doing really well today.
And where are you now? You're at the top of a mountain, I believe.
Yeah. Hey, go figure, on the top of a mountain on the Appalachian Trail, right? I just passed the top of some mountain, but I don't even think it has a name.
It's a pretty cool way to communicate, though, no doubt. And the last time we spoke, you were staying in the Cookie Lady's Garden just before Dalton, Massachusetts, and you stayed that night in Cheshire at a town campsite. Tell us about that. 'Cause the only town campsite I remember was in, in Unionville.
Yes, it was called Father Campsite. It's actually a memorial campsite set up by the local Appalachian Trail maintenance group. Father Tom was the pastor of the local Catholic Church, used to ran it as sort of a hostel, the way some of the churches do. And then after his tenure there, the pastor stopped doing that. But Father Tom was a hiker. He did section hikes. And so the local group got together and figured out a way to get this, area of land in the middle of Cheshire, right across the street from a good place that sells ice cream and burgers.
Oh, perfect. Absolutely perfect for hikers then.
Oh, absolutely. And it kind of tucked back off the road. They got water there and a little shed with power hookups so everybody can charge, loaner bicycles so you can go to town and grab
Very cool.
resupply. And all free. You just show up and you set yourself up.
The trail has changed so much since I went, and that was just 6 years ago. You and Beth are both experiencing places that I've never seen or been to. So, it's lovely the way the trail is always going to be dynamic and always changing, isn't it?
Yeah, it's an ebb and a flow. I think, there are things that used to be that aren't, and things that are now that never were.
That's right. Yeah.
Tomorrow, next year, there'll be some other variation of it.
Yeah,
So,
no doubt.
Yeah.
And the next day was Mount Greylock, which was a pretty special day for me, I recall. And you got to do a bit of a vortex up there. And for those people who don't know what a vortex is, just there's something about the energy of a place and things that are happening around you that makes you stay there. So what actually happened to you?
Well, as an aside, I just finished another vortex, so I'm behind today for some trail magic. So climbing up Greylock, which gets this kind of reputation, is, oh my God, you start climbing again. It's like, it's fine. It was a gradual, 3,000 feet by the time you get to the top, but it wasn't difficult.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'm not trying to minimize it. It's beautiful. You get to the top. They've got a big tower, a monument tower, which I was able to go up. It had rained that morning, so the windows were a bit splattered with rain in the top of the observation tower, but I got some beautiful pictures. And then they had a lodge there. We got there like 11:15, and the sign said, okay, lunch starts serving 11:30. We're like, cool, we'll wait 15 minutes. And so the 15 minutes ended up being 3:30.
But why? So, hang on, that is a big vortex for a day, isn't it?
It's just horrible, because the day was supposed to be like 17 odd miles, and the Greylock was almost dead center. So we actually got there fairly early, and they only had 8 or 9 miles to go. So you kind of get a casual sense that you're halfway through the day. And so it started with we got there waiting for food, but it took them a long time. I mean, ordered the food, it was maybe 11:30, 11:45. It was probably noon before we even got served. We were waiting for Brightside. So Obi-Wan and I had made it up there, and Brightside had not yet at that point.
Right.
So then we waited for her, and she showed up maybe half an hour later. So, now you're getting to 12:30. By the time she eats, it's 1 o'clock, 1:15. And then we're just sitting around. It gets to be like, I don't know, there's 4 or 5 other hikers, and we're just kind of chatting, and I grabbed another soda or something like that. And then it gets to about 2, and people go, okay, we better start getting going. And then I had some emails that I had to address and deal with some stuff. And it was like after 3 before I was finally able to scrape myself away. It was not the fault of the vortex for the last hour, but it was, but in the end, it was well after 3. But the day ended well, so.
But hang on. But I think it's still important though to enjoy those moments when they happen. You had 4 hours at Greylock, happy days. Frankly, chatting with people and friends. So that's a good thing. And I noticed that you mentioned that your left ankle has been playing up a bit recently. How long has that been going on now? And because you said you really noticed it coming down from Greylock.
Yeah, it's just kind of weird because the left ankle is I took an old injury to it way a long time ago, and it never really healed up fantastically. It took about 5 years before I stopped feeling any pain. Not debilitating, but it never really bothers me, and it flares up every now and again. But it hadn't really been bothering me as I came up the mountain, and I sat there for 3 or 4 hours, and I left, and all of a sudden it was bothering me. Just one of those stupid things. Yeah. But it's mostly gone now, so it's just weird. It's just part of, I think, this cycle of pain that we go through. I call it it's the roulette wheel of pain, right? There's the markers, and you spin the wheel, the ball lands on left ankle pain, right? Then there's always the mystery spot, right, where it lands on that, and something pops up. It's like, I haven't had that pain before. Where did that come from?
Yeah. But as you say, the day ended well because you got some particularly welcome trail magic from something called Firebug. Had you met Firebug before?
Yeah, no. So the whole thing with Firebug was a true absolute example of trail magic beyond walking by and there's a cooler full of stuff or guy set up at a road crossing with a cooking. We dropped down into North Adams, kind of at the bottom of Greylock, and we had another like 2 miles to go to the shelter. And it's like, at that point it's 5:30. None of us were particularly enthusiastic. I mean, they were well ahead of me because I had that last hour where I was
sure.
But I got down to this little bitty park, and there was 4 or 5 coolers set up in this park. The local church or something puts them out for hikers. Static trail magic, coolers, some food, some drinks, things like that. So we're kind of doing that. And before I got there, we were there. It's a road crossing. We had to go to about 0.6 miles to the resupply. It had been intended for the day. We would duck over for the resupply, come back, and then continue on. But when the day stretched itself out into 5:36 p.m., you got an hour detour before resupply, and you can't not resupply because we all had planned on it. So you're getting kind of low. and apparently Brightside was there before I got there. Brightside's a 20-year-old gal, right? So the world sees her differently than it sees Obi-Wan or myself. But a woman stopped and offered her a ride to the grocery store, which she gladly accepted. I wasn't even there when that happened. So I arrive, and Obi-Wan tells me, "Oh, Brightside got a ride to the grocery store." I'm like, "Well, geez, we got to get a piece of that, because at least if we walk there, we can get a ride back or something, right?" So he and I hustle out of there, got to the grocery store. She was finished shopping. The woman was still shopping. We ran in, shopped, came back out, and she offered, said, "Hey, I live nearby. I do trail. I kind of take care of people from the trail. You're welcome to come to my house. I'll cook for you. You can camp in my yard."
Oh, nice.
And so we drove back with her, and she's very close to the trail as it passes through that little bit of town in North Adams. We set up tents in her grassy yard. She cooked burgers for us, beer. She had cooler beer and drinks and soda and chips, and we sat there, and we had about a mile and a half to go, but we said, okay, forget about it. We'll just tack it on to the next day. And so somewhere in the middle of that evening, I was looking at my Far Out app, and I realized I had made a mistake for the day, where I'd set our start point, our end point wrong. And so the next day was supposed to start behind us. So in fact, we were already ahead of what the next day was supposed to be. So we didn't need to pick up those extra miles that we didn't do. So it was happy days to spend the night at the Trail Magic ladies yard. Next morning we got up, and she cooked us breakfast and pancakes, and we had coffee and some Danishes. I mean, she was just so kind. But so random. I think that's the point I'm getting at.
Yes, perfect. I got to tell you though, and this really made me laugh when I got your message. You need to reread that. What I've written here is a convoluted explanation of how you'd miscalculated something, but it ended up well. And I was just about to give up when I noticed a single line paragraph after that one. You wrote, "I'm drinking a beer to that," and I cracked up because I think you may have been drinking a beer or two when you wrote the previous paragraph.
Well, of course I was, and I will apologize, because sometimes my notes are stream of consciousness, and they're dictated. And so sometimes it doesn't even write what I said. Dictation stuff. But it all worked out. It worked out even better, like I said, because the mileage for the next day was not augmented. We didn't lose and didn't have to add the mile and a half or 2 miles that we didn't.
Yeah. It's a good thing to discover, actually, isn't it? Yeah.
Absolutely.
And you say you mentioned you were still at Firebergs the next morning. Took a while to head out, hence less than a 15-mile day, which took you to Vermont and the start of the long trail. It's really getting real now, isn't it? The states feel like they're just slipping away from you, don't they?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, we bounced through. It seemed that we bounced through Massachusetts in a blink of an eye, right? And then we crossed into Vermont, and I was unaware. I mean, I've heard of the Long Trail. We've talked about the Long Trail. I know we're supposed to go for 105 miles on the Long Trail, but I was unaware that the two of them started. It starts right at the Vermont border, big sign, and there's, we stopped there, take a picture of the big sign. Some other people showed up who had to hike to that spot to start the Long Trail. So you have to go like either from the one road or the other. It's several miles in either direction. But if you want to start the Long Trail from its inception point, you have to hike to it. So you have to add a few miles to it.
That's right. Yeah.
So we ran into a few people who had done that literally while we were standing by the sign. Two different groups of people did that. So
you've just told us about a nice bit of trail magic that you had, but I've just been talking with Beth and Andrew, and it seems to me that they're getting trail magic every day, and sometimes twice a day. And your note says you pushed hard for 4 miles the following morning. What was that for? Why did you push hard for 4 miles? Something to do with the rumor.
Yeah, for the rumor. That's right. That was for the rumor of trail magic. And it was like not just a rumor. It was a guy who said, "Oh, there's always a guy. There's two of them. They compete across from either side of the road, and they're there every day, and blah blah blah." And it was ghost town.
False rumor. Oh, it's a horrible feeling, isn't it? I know you listen. And everybody listening, don't think you should expect trail magic when you're out there. And it's always such a welcome thing when it's so surprising. But there are times when you're coming to a road, you're thinking, shall I have another bite of something now, or shall I just wait just to see if there may be something there?
You know it, absolutely. But you're right in your first comment. I think it's important that your listeners hear that. None of us, or very few of us, we try not to expect anything, right? And when we find it, we're grateful. We're always grateful. But what you described is hopeful, right? Every now and again, you come into road crossing, you hope for something. Yeah. But people who get an expectation that this thing should be happening have the wrong perspective.
Yes, totally the wrong perspective. You're absolutely right. Yeah. And you stopped for lunch and met a few interesting people, and one particular woman who was section hiking the long trail. And tell us about one of the women there who was slightly older than the optimum hiker, I suspect.
So we stopped for lunch. Obi-Wan was slightly ahead of me, and I got there, and he was chatting up with these two ladies, and they were finishing a section hike of the long trail. They literally just had to hike down to where the road crossing was, another couple of miles. And so we sat and had lunch. It was one woman, the two ladies were in their 50s, right? We talked about that, and they were friends, they were college roommates. And the other woman was the mother of one of these women, and she was 87. 87 years old, spry, vigorous, sharp, and mentally, physically, obviously, finishing up a section hike of the long trail. And not like she's finishing up the 2 miles that she didn't do from 50 years ago, right? I mean, she's been doing it recently. And I looked at her, you had no doubt that she's working and she's having not no problem. She's getting it done without, and I'm always impressed by when I see people who the world would write off as not, this is not for them or incapable or sure. People like the gal, this visually impaired gal that we talked about last week. Nobody would say, "Sure, go ahead and do this. This makes sense."
Good for her.
87. Yeah, she was very kind and very beautiful people. And then they were giving us, you talk trail magic, right? They were giving us every extra little bit of stuff in their packs for food that they were coming off trail. They didn't need anymore. Here, have some of this. Here, have some of this.
How nice. How nice.
Yeah.
And you ended up that night near a lookout tower. Tell us about that, because actually you did say, when you must have written while you're still waiting for Brightside to show up. You said, I hope she makes it before dark. Did she?
Yes, of course. You're right, because I finished making my notes before she got there. In fact, it was because we were, not quite a half mile past the shelter that we had all intended to stop at. And so I did manage to get her a text message, but you never know, just because I can send it doesn't mean she can receive it out here, that we would bounce past the intended shelter stop, because according to the far out comments, the lookout tower, which was only 0.3, beyond, although another 300 or 400 feet up, was a nice spot with a bunch of really nice tent sites around. It turned out to be the case. It was a beautiful spot. Although that particular tower was locked down, closed. She arrived in time. Some youngish dude showed up, a little under the influence of various things.
Over refreshed, we used to call it.
Okay. Well, he was over refreshed on things you both drink and smoke. And he was a nice guy, but he climbed it, up the tower, because bypass, there's no stairs to get to the bottom level. So he's kind of shimmying up the legs.
Oh, gosh. Not a good idea. Not a good idea.
But he made it down and left. So, okay. He survived his ordeal.
And the next night you stayed at Stratton Pond Shelter. That's a beautiful body of water there, isn't it? And I both times I've passed it on a glorious day when it's been like a mill pond. Was it nice? Did it look nice when you got down to it?
Absolutely. Same thing. Maybe not quite mill pond, but very still. But unfortunately, or not really unfortunately, but it happened twice now, because it happened last night also, where we arrived at another pond. We get there just a touch late. Too late to go for a swim. I want to go for a swim in one of these ponds. It was so beautiful, but it was 6:30-ish when we got there, and it's it doesn't seem late to the outside world, but when you're just arriving, you got to set up camp, you got to eat.
6:30 is 10:30 at night, mate.
Yeah, exactly, and so and the weather was pleasant enough that you would have enjoyed a swim. Not too hot, so it wasn't like I'm dying of heat. Let me get in the pond, but it's an absolutely gorgeous spot, and I was able to grab a photograph of the sun as it was dropping down in the mountain on the other side of the pond.
Very nice. Very nice. I think you sent me that. Is that one picture you sent me?
Yes, that's Stratton Pond. That's that picture. Mm-hmm.
That's right. Yeah, and you got to the Green Mountain House Hostel yesterday. I've always had a soft spot for Green Mountain House, because when I went there in 2019, for some reason, somebody must have mentioned I was, Mighty Blue was on the trail, and they'd actually changed their flag to a Union Jack, the British flag, which was so cool. I've got a picture of it as well. When I arrived there, it was a pretty special moment for me, and it's a really good hostel, isn't it?
Oh, it's absolutely 5-star. Anybody who's hiking the trail should go to the Green Mountain House. Jeff is a wonderful, absolutely wonderful proprietor. I didn't realize he'd been around as long as 2019, because he talked about when he was first starting, he was learning, trying to do things and figure things out. But whatever he learned, he's implemented to a really proper experience for hikers. I mean, it's a clean place. It's well set up. It's got every amenity a hiker could want. He's very kind and courteous. He shuttled us to town for resupply. I mean, anything you want from a hostel, it's there. But it's also, I don't know, homey maybe is the right word. You feel comfortable there. It's not just slapped together with plywood. And to be a little bit snarky, shall we say, certain of the southern hostels have that sense of throw a few sheets of plywood together, create a divider, and
I know what you
not
mean.
just a sense, but it's an absolute. This is decorated with a lot of interesting hiking memorabilia and Appalachian trail signs. So it's definitely a 5-star experience out on the trail.
And talking about 5-star experiences, you went up and over the Bromley Mountain, which is a ski resort. I remember doing that myself. But I suppose because you got so many miles in your legs now, you're taking these climbs in your stride, aren't you? Or are they still a bit of a push for you?
No push at all. I mean, I don't mean to be we're He-Man strong, stronger than anybody out here, but every one of these mountains is just another mountain. I mean, the only difference is sometimes it takes, climbing them longer. It takes a little longer to get there. It's 2,000 feet over 3 miles.
Well, you're still going to be hitting 4,000 foot climbs, so you enjoy that as well. And
they're coming.
This is why I've always said this is a south to north hike. Because you're ready for the White Mountains, you're ready for Maine because you've got 2,000 miles under your legs, haven't you? Or,
absolutely. I'm very excited about it. Bromley was really cool because it's a ski resort, like you described. And I didn't know that. And so as you're climbing a mountain, for the 80% of it, it's just climbing through the woods and another mountain. And then somewhere near the end, probably the last, half a mile, you kind of get pitched out onto this kind of wide grassy area. I'm like, oh, cool. And I turn around, I'm looking for the power lines, right? So if anybody who's hiked out here understands what I'm getting at, is that almost every time you come out of the woods to kind of a wide open area, and it's the right of way for the power lines, and so it's cleared out. So I jump out on this wide grassy area, and I'm like, oh, cool, where are the power lines? And I'm looking around, going, no power lines. I'm like, so I'm expecting, as always, to walk across, perpendicular to this flat wide area and pick up the trail on the other side. And I look at my far out, and no, just walk straight up this grassy area. So,
it's nice.
So I did.
Lovely.
And it turns out it's a wide grassy area because it's a ski run. I'm like, oh, okay. And I get to the top, and you got the gondolas, and there's a lodge or something up there. And like, cool, ski area.
So what's your mileage now then, Dave? And how far are you from the New Hampshire-Vermont border, which is the big one?
Okay. So I think we were at roughly 1688, 89, close to 1690 right now.
Wow.
We will hit Hanover's the border.
Yes.
And the plan right now is, I think Hanover's 4 or 5 days.
Oh, right.
Yeah. In fact, okay, so it's like 60 or 70 miles to Hanover, so a little less than 4 or 5 days. And then, so as far as timing goes, I've got the days laid out. We will be climbing Moosalok next week on Thursday. So we will hit Kinsman's Notch, and we'll stay at the Notch Hostel on Thursday, and then we're going to zero the next day and kind of get ourselves ready to tackle the whites.
So at Moosalok, are you going to? Both times I've done it, I've gone around the other side of the mountain and come up the north side and climbed down from back to Glencliff, which is, I can't remember the name of the hostel. Yeah. And the Welcome, is it Welcome? I can't remember anyway.
Hiker's Welcome.
Hiker's Welcome, that's right, yeah. And that's been good for me, because in my mind, I was concerned with there's a waterfall running down the whole side of that mountain. I would have hated to have come down that way with the water around. So it might be worth thinking about and just see how it goes. But
I've heard that.
Sorry.
I'm sorry. I've heard that. I hear you. And so go ahead. I was just thinking about that. I was thinking that as a south to north hike, the normal Nobo it's a lot of elevation, but maybe gentler. As coming Sobo, it seems extraordinarily steep, which of course makes going down very hard. But boy, it must have been tough going up for you as well.
It was, but I felt pretty good. Well, by then, as we just said, my legs were fine by then. I had no problem getting up mountains at all. So I would rather face that. And there were some very tricky places going up that north side. So coming down, I would find difficult myself. But that's just me. Now,
no, I don't like that either. And the safety factor is an interesting.
Absolutely, you always have to think of that. Yeah, and one interesting thing that I liked that you said yesterday, so the trail has an interesting way of folding people back on themselves. Yes. I know what you mean by that, but tell the listeners what you mean by it.
It's just this strange reconnection of people that you meet and re-meet that you shouldn't, given the amount of distance and time that we're out here. I mean, I'm hiking with Obi-Wan, who went by a different trail name back when I met him in the Smoky Mountains. I last saw Obi-Wan, who was hiking with his wife at the time, in Hot Springs, right? I mean, that's 1,300 miles ago, and then we've been hiking together for the last couple of weeks. Okay, that's one instance of it. But then I ran into this guy who goes by Lord Chuckles, and he's super fast. Yeah, he's a youngster, shall we say, and he seems to enjoy that moniker. But I ran into him. I first met him at the Quarterway Inn. Last saw him at Quarterway Inn, called 550 mile at the 550 mile mark. Last ran into him at Woods Hole, and then now 2-3 days ago he shows up at the hostel or on the trail, and then he ended up at the Green Mountain House hostel the same night that we were at. And so he's very fast, and I was off trail for a week, so there's no way that you would ever say that I would see him again, and yet the trail folded itself and folded us back together now. And he was in the hostel. He was at the same shelter with us as last night. Might be the same shelter that we're heading to tonight, but eventually he's going to bounce forward and be gone. But
I love that expression. That really touched me. That expression, folding people back on themselves, and that describes how it feels as well. You haven't seen someone for ages, and it feels a great, reconciliation to see somebody 1,600 miles after you saw them before. It's just an amazing thing when it happens, and it happens all the time.
Yeah. These aren't the only examples. The ones I gave you. These are not the only examples. It's happened multiple times. Yeah, it's just amazing. It's just amazing.
Yeah. Well, okay, man. Well, look, good to talk with you. You're going well. I mean, you haven't got that long. We've got about 4 or 5 more weeks, and we'll be done. So keep on trucking and stay safe and look after your ankle. I hope that is that feeling better now?
Yeah. It's more or less gone. I mean, it's now it's no longer anything that I think too much about. Okay. It's just something that's part of the overall, wheel of fortune we get out here, right?
That's right. Yeah. All right, mate. We take it easy, okay? Speak soon.
All right. Thanks.
Cheers then. Okay. Bye.
Cheers. Bye.
Those miles are really coming down, aren't they? Dave still sends me these stream of consciousness texts, which don't always make sense, but they always give me much to ask him about. Next time we speak, Dave's going to be in New Hampshire as the trail steps up a gear and puts him through the ringer. I can remember crossing the Connecticut River, which is on the border between Vermont and New Hampshire, and the first time I did it, I was a little wary because I'd heard so much about what was to come. The second time, in 2019, I was also wary because I knew what was to come. I'll see you next week.